Welcome to House Rule, a podcast about role-playing. This is episode 12. I am your host, Ed.
I'm Ebo.
This is Jeff.
I'm Lee.
All right, and we are going to talk about some pretty exciting things this episode, including one, House Rule.
An actual house rule. I believe that's the second one in the history of our podcast.
I think you're right.
Lucky you guys.
Yeah. All right.
Your perseverance in listening to us all this time is finally paying off.
Yep, the thing that you've been waiting for, that you've been clinging to desperately. All right, but yeah, first off, we've been doing some gaming remote play, as we discussed in our last episode.
Sure have.
Pretty remote.
But there's also been another development in that, and also in the
yeah, and Lee was the first one to do it. I would like to point that out. And Lee also did it better than Jeff did.
So why don't you take the helm and tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, sure. We managed to get an OwnTV account for House Rule, and OwnTV is a website that streams games, and they agreed to, for whatever reason, to stream our role-playing games. And we started that 2 weekends ago. I streamed a game, a heavily adjusted World of Darkness style game. And then just last weekend, Jeff streamed one of his now legendary Pathfinder Underdark games. I only say legendary because there's so many pictures on the internet. They're all over the place. You can see them if you just Google House Rule Gaming, Underdark, role-playing in the dark, drow. But it's legendary. You'll see it every time.
Or you could put it in the address. But yeah.
You know what? I was trying to make it sound more impressive for you, Jeff. I'm trying to boost your ego, so you don't think that no one cares.
Well, yeah. So when we streamed, some people actually watched the game. That was
cool. We shared it on Reddit, and there were a couple people who came on. If you guys are out there, you know who you are, because you're a pretty select group. And yeah, they actually seemed pretty excited for us to stream a role-playing game. I was surprised.
Yeah, I think the coolest was the one guy who was on there saying, I've been thinking about getting into this and I don't really get it. I don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to check it out. And that's the coolest thing, because that's sort of an opportunity to expand the community, expand the hobby. Yeah.
Share the load.
It's like when someone asks you what role playing is, it's very difficult to explain, and it's not a far off thing for a relatively normal geek to be at least a little interested in or curious.
Yeah.
So.
Especially since I think role playing is, I think a lot of other nerdy subcultures view role playing as, the pinnacle of nerdness. If you role play, and also if you like role play Star Trek, I think people would universally revile you. But,
I don't.
That's about as nerdy as it gets.
Nobody's reviling nerds.
Whatever you're into. I mean, it's but that's sort of the thing. It's that awkwardness of being in role-playing for the first time, or not knowing if you're going to like it. So it's a completely anonymous and commitmentless way to just sort of see what's going on. And I mean, that's not the only purpose behind the streaming, but that's sort of came to mind that, hey, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I know for a lot of people it's, it's difficult to get into it because you have to go through the trouble of finding a gaming group if you don't already know one, and that's awkward and weird.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've come to understand that there's a decent amount of demand for good quality, like actual play audio and video recordings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just one of those things that people who are either new to it and want to kind of get more experience with it, just kind of indirectly, and also people who just don't get to play as much as they'd like, and they just sort of want to keep up with what's new and kind of just hear a interesting story.
Yeah. And we're going to be streaming. I don't know if Jeff's going to be streaming every session. I think so. Are you?
We'll see.
I'm going to be streaming every session of my game. And we'll have them up. Like, we'll have actually the recordings of them all up on our site from Own TV, like the embedded video. And yeah, I think that, over time, hopefully people will actually enjoy the story and characters and that sort of thing. Maybe not quite as much as we do, but probably enough. Like a little
one thing
our own creative contribution to the internet.
One thing I was going to ask you two, now that two of you have done this, and we were all kind of falling asleep at the end of the last session that Jeff ran.
Well, you guys were.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a little later here, but did you guys feel it was a lot different doing streaming the game where you were all together versus the other game where we were playing with a lot of different remote locations?
The way I felt was in the very first session that I did, it was a little awkward for like 15 minutes, and after that it was just totally normal. It was just role playing with a camera.
Yeah.
The second time I didn't think it was awkward at all. There was no difference to me.
And I think there's just so much mics and technology and crap already there for role playing remotely that it's just adding the stream onto it. It's just it's a one more thing.
No big deal.
Yeah, I guess I got the impression that the internet connection was sort of wheezing under the pressure of all of the different devices, but
Yeah.
it seems to work out all right.
Yeah, it actually went off smoother than I expected. And when I watched some of the videos later, the sound quality, which I think is the most important part, was good.
Uh-huh.
The video quality was good. It
When
looked
you guys
and sounded better than I expected.
When you were playing your game together, were you using microphones or did you have that speakerphone device?
And we had the speakerphone device,
Okay.
and we actually spent a good amount of time, maybe like an hour, a little bit over an hour, before I ran my game, just tweaking the sound and trying to get it all working right. Which was a good thing, because if we hadn't, that would have been a hilarious nightmare for anyone who had decided to listen.
It's true.
Right.
It ended up sounding pretty well, too.
Yeah, it sounded a lot better than I expected it to. I think that's what we'll probably end up using when I do my game, because it's, there's not a lot of reason to wear the headsets, and that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we had talked about the possibilities with this, but I mean, it seems like the one real advantage that the streaming video would have over a recorded actual play would be, that people can kind of get their licks in while the game is still on. Do you think there's any possibility of I don't know. I mean, obviously, if somebody's watching it and they're confused by something, you can just type out a quick answer to them if they have a question or something. But do you think there's any other chance for input from viewers and things like that to go into this?
Yeah, I mean, I would think it would take a certain kind of game.
Right.
You'd probably want to design the game with that in mind, or I mean, if you came up with a cool idea for something like that later on.
Okay.
If we ended up doing a fiasco
Ooh.
one at some time, that would be really fun.
Yeah, people could ruin our lives for 2 hours. That would be really great.
Oh,
I'm
man.
not saying we're going to, but wink, wink, we might.
No, that's some serious potential, sort of that Drew Carey thing, but with Fiasco, other people deciding shit. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
god,
that game
everyone
is
would be
insanely
gay.
fun.
As if Fiasco doesn't already turn a little gay.
Well, I don't know when. Yeah. When half
No
of
matter
us
how
are
many
women.
dudes play chicks.
Just because every time we play, Jeff and I want to be lesbians in love with each other.
Yeah.
It's not
Doesn't
just
turn
that
off
you guys
anyone
want to
else,
be;
though,
it's
you know?
that
It's not
we
gay
want
because
to be.
lesbian.
It is.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I'm sure we'll be visiting this subject on a regular basis, keeping you guys up to
Okay.
date.
Yeah, and I guess sort of the plugging information. If you stop on over by our site, click live stream, you'll see some stuff on there. If we're not playing anything at the moment, on the right there are archives that'll take you quickly and easily to any of the videos that have been recorded.
Yep, and even if we don't make a blog post about the next time we're going to be running the game, I'm going to try to keep the, somewhere updated with when we're going to be running the next live stream game as soon as we know, just so that people can have an idea, have a reliable place to check, that sort of thing. So look forward to that. I'll be debuting that on the blog sometime in the near future. All sorts of features and stuff. So yeah, what was next on the agenda?
I wanted to talk about you guessed it, house rule.
Right, the house rule, the important one.
Well, yeah, this is really fresh in my mind just because we just played Jeff's Displaced Underdark campaign, most recently, and
We were just talking about that.
that game actually is really chock full of house rules now that I am reflecting on it.
Yeah, we have a ton in there.
I mean, he's got an entire page of house rules, but I mean, depending on where
there's
this
probably more
discussion leads us, I mainly wanted to talk about one of them, which I guess is just called merit points.
Yep.
Yeah, basically, I mean, Jeff, do you want to explain it, or should I take a whack at it?
Sure. I guess where it came from is in the last sort of Drow game I ran, I would do like these little quizzes or some other little thing to basically give players the opportunity to get inherent bonuses to their stats, because the magic level of the game is quite low, and I didn't want the players to feel like they're falling way behind on the power and stuff like that. So that was the original intent behind it, and then I ended up just sort of adding a bunch of different stuff. Basically, every session, the players get a merit point, even if they don't level up. So even if they don't level at the end of the session, you still get something. And then you can spend that to basically replace things that you would otherwise get from equipment or certain party comps. Like you can get bonuses to attack that you can stack with a bard or a priest, but not both, that sort of thing. Or like bonus hit points or stat bonuses, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I guess for me, the thing that Jeff does a lot is with his crazy house rules, is he tends to offer players more freedom of choice in whatever system we're playing, even if it's a system with a lot of freedom of choice. Like, like in any of the many variants of White Wolf that Jeff has run, we've almost always had, some other crazy shit that we can do that gives us even more, customization options for the numbers on our characters, which is, neat. I like that. I think everyone likes more customization options.
And with merit points in particular, I really feel a strong White Wolf influence on that, just by the basis of how you spend them. It's like generally the bonuses go from 1 to 5 that you can get in something, and generally it costs 1 point for the first level, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of got that same sloping progression. So getting that getting a +1 in anything, which this is the thing I found over the past several sessions that I like the most about the system, is you can stack your first level character with those hideous odd number ability scores, and by the time a couple of sessions have passed, you have got a bunch of beautiful even numbered ability scores.
Oh.
And each of those is just going to cost you a 1 of your merit points to get a +1 in something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you want to save up for +5, like the equivalent of the whatever Tome of Gainful Exercise or whatever you're not going to be getting in this.
Nice.
Like you went straight for Strumpf.
Yeah, I mean, of course, but
Priority.
that +5 strength, that's going to cost you. Getting that +5 strength is
going to be the only thing you get.
a major undertaking. I mean, if the typical duration of Jeff's campaigns is any indication, it's unlikely that you'll ever get that high.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if that game continues the way it's been going.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other things that you added into the most recent version of the house rule. Mainly things that I have been neglecting in favor of the traditional awesome stuff that I want.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, you had the thing that allows us to blow a bunch of merit points temporarily in order to get a single round of godlike power.
That's sort of a thing I've wanted to see in supported in role-playing systems that I don't really think that really gets it there. It was just sort of an idea that I'm not offended no one's using, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you just, kind of as an afterthought, you just had, buy additional feats, or I'm not sure if there was something for skills in there. I can't remember.
Or, the class or the racial features.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you also have house ruled in a large number of very potent advantages for individual races, which
I guess sort of the idea behind that and all the house rules is that our group has always been a numbers group, and I mean, I know people look down on that, and some people probably are happy someone else is admitting it, but I mean, we've always been a numbers group, and the setting I'm running in is very second edition-y, and I want to keep that. So the idea is to keep the numbers fun and happy, and the players not getting screwed, yet at the same time, definitely staying very close to the sort of low magic races, very meaningful sort of Forgotten Realms second edition setting.
I don't know how second edition I can consider it until I see a giant walking mechanical spider. Just consider that. I'm waiting.
I don't know. Maybe it is just the number crunching that I like, but I found that feel, the sort of older edition lower lower magic isn't exactly the essence of it, but basically I don't know, maybe scarcer magic is what I'm thinking of, just fewer items.
I think that in 4.0 or in 4th edition, magic items were such a commonplace thing. If you didn't have magic items, you were not a player who was going to defeat things that you were supposed to defeat. And in 3.5 in Pathfinder, it's a lot, it's a lot more fluid. You can do what you want with clever tactics, unusual strategies, and some brawn, maybe a little GM fudging here and there. But the more that we play Pathfinder, the more I realize that we don't really run. I think that low or medium magic Pathfinder games are more common for us, and 3.5 for that matter. Magic items, that is. Even when Sean ran his Launch of FinSafe game, that game had huge amounts of magic in the world, but the characters were almost always scraping for magic items.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I believe Sean's reasoning was that he didn't want to do it, but we've always played before 3. Or before 4th edition. We always played sort of lowish magic settings.
I don't know about that. I mean, I know that I want to point the finger at Jeff mainly. He's run some of the most magicful D&D settings I've ever encountered. I mean, just the store where you can go and buy any magic item that you can possibly afford, and you can browse the magic items that you'll never be able to afford. And I think that it's sort of, that was more fun in 3rd edition before 4th edition came out and kind of made that the way the
standard
game. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to poke too much fun at 4th edition just because we've largely stopped playing it, but it's just sort of if in 3rd edition the numbers in 3rd edition and Pathfinder, I should say, the numbers will kind of skew strangely if you don't get some amount of magical gear to support them. But in 4th edition, the math just doesn't work if you don't get the gear that is appropriate for your level. Like, I don't know, the way monster levels and challenge ratings work in 4th edition just kind of breaks down if there's...
Well, yeah, I mean, from a perspective of someone who likes to play like melee characters,
that is an understatement.
I mean, it's like if I play 3rd edition, if I really twink it out, I can hit on a 3 by like level 5 or whatever. But like in 4th edition, you have to really twink it out, and you're still hitting on an 11. You know?
Yeah,
right.
So I think in 4th edition, part of the problem for me was that the magic items didn't feel special.
Right.
And in 3.5, especially when we're running the lowish magic games, magic items always feel special. And the stat bonuses that we're getting to balance us out, you know, they feel they're cool, but they're really keeping us, you know, even.
Yeah.
When we don't have the magic items. And like we're level 4 and the most magical thing we have is a +1 longsword. Oh no, we did get that bag. We got a magic bag.
Even if the magical items aren't what we want, they still seem useful.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the merits give us that added power that we really want, that allows our character to go in a unique direction without having us scrape for a specific magic item and, I don't know,
Yeah, I mean,
go out of our way to push for it.
I'd suggest a house rule like this for, you know, almost anybody who wants to have a setting where, you know, where there's not a lot of magic, but you still want your characters to feel powerful. Like, I know there's a lot to be gained from having a setting where there's not a lot of magic and characters always feel like the underdogs. You know what I mean? Because you can always tweak monster numbers and have them fight against goblins until level 13.
Well, yeah, if you think of like a more almost medieval type setting.
Yeah, right. And like I think that, you know, that of course has its place. But I mean, a lot of people like to run settings where magic items feel cool, but they don't. Like, it's hard to make magic items feel cool when you are required to give them to your characters. And if you're just adding numbers, the vast majority of players love when you give them numbers. And it also makes the magic items that they get seem even cooler.
Even if they don't give you strength.
Right.
Exactly.
I, for one, would almost recommend that if a GM is not 100% sure about implementing this rule in their game, that they just start with using the points for ability score adjustments, because I don't think that, I mean, having a +5 in an ability score is very potent, but it's going to take you a long time to get there, and I think smaller ability score adjustments, in my opinion as a player, they just make the game more fun. Like in the immediate moment, you're getting something that makes your character, you know, perform a little bit better, and you're going to get more mileage out of it if you spread them apart more.
That's what I've been doing. I have one point in like.
So I'm just saying, like, you can. What I like the most about it is it lets you fill in the areas where your character is weak, as opposed to front loading your strength to +5 so that you can hit like a meteor.
Yeah. I have been front loading my. I mean, I have like +1 to hit, +1 to strength, +1 to damage.
Yeah, I mean, I took a +1 in hit and AC, I think, just because getting that +1 in anything you want is really cheap. But I think particularly if you're just talking about ability scores, like a +1 in an ability score is enough to you know, soften the awkward math you have to do to make a character at first level, but it isn't enough to make your character a monster.
Also, in our group, it seems that any encouragement to feel more comfortable not min-maxing is very good.
Right.
And I know that's not true in a lot of groups, but for our group, and I'm sure there are others that, you know, you feel like you're missing out if you don't dump that social stat for that extra +2 to hit. Because what use is it going to be, sort of?
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like that a lot.
I'm in this drow game, I'm playing a monk, and it's like, for charisma, there's like no reason for me to have charisma, but I still kind of wish I had some charisma, you know, like in the all intrigue
Yeah.
and drow stuff. So that's one of those things I probably will sink at least +2 into that to get a little bit more bonus on those
Yeah, and, like,
skills.
I think part of it is, like, for me anyway, like, I wanted to have a cool, like, anime-esque character who's, like, lean and wiry, but he's really strong and he can do all sorts of crazy stuff. And I made a soul knife, and he's really strong and he can do crazy stuff. But the only reason it was possible for me to do crazy stuff, at least in the early levels, was because I got to sink a merit point into wisdom to put me up to the magical 13 that no melee fighter ever wants to take 13 wisdom. So anyway, like, it wasn't that big of a deal, because I needed that 13 wisdom to get some cool feats, so now I can, like, run the walls and stuff. And, like, I would have had to wait until level 4, delayed all this other stuff that I wanted, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I mean, I just think that was it helped me, at the very least, be a cooler character for the first 4 levels than I would normally have been.
And to sum up what he's saying, it's basically allowing him to use psionics to cheat earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why not? That's the only reason I'm playing a psionic character anyway.
Well,
So I can make a great axe out of thin air, in a magical great axe out of thin air, in a game where there's no magic, and then use it to beat people who have no magical armor and no magical weapons,
You are
and
cheating.
cut them in half. Sounds like cheating when I say it like that, but if you don't think about it, you don't really notice it.
Yeah, anyway.
You say it like that specifically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Make me sound like a villain.
I already know that this is merit points house rule is something I'm definitely going to implement the next time I run a Pathfinder related game, which I'm hoping
He's
will
just
be fairly
stealing it
soon.
from you, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I'm going to steal a lot of Jeff's ideas.
Well, that's fine, probably.
Well, don't get ideas aids.
Jeff can't. Wow. Jeff comes up with a lot of good house rules in general.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that we might spend some time on a future episode talking about the expanded racial traits, which we brought up earlier.
Hey, those have been pretty fun.
Yeah,
they're really interesting.
Sort of a borrowed concept from 4th edition, seemingly.
Yeah.
Same
Weird, huh?
with Minions. 4th edition did some stuff right, man.
but
They
yeah,
did. Just, I think the biggest stick in my craw with 4th edition has always been the magical items.
oh well.
But this
you'll have that.
gets around that. It gets around
To a
ever
degree.
having that's a similar problem in 3rd edition or in Pathfinder. You don't really have that because you can do whatever you want with magical items now.
Keeps your craw stick free.
Yep. I think it's important not to have things in your craw when you're podcasting.
All right, that's enough about your craw. All right, nobody wants to hear about it. That's
Wow,
gross.
fair enough. I'm just gonna look sad for a little while.
You don't have to lie, Ed.
The one, yeah. Don't judge me. The one remaining thing that we had talked about before before we recorded that we were hoping to get to in this episode, and it looks like we'll have a decent amount of time to go over it, is just talk about the future vis-a-vis role-playing games, more or less vis-a-vis ourselves as well. So,
Man, you are just really busting that one out, aren't you?
yeah, no, I am. I'm
Busting you all day.
No, it's true. It always seems like there's another game. There's always another
Right.
game.
I thought you were gonna make fun of vis-a-vis also.
No.
It's long been one of my biggest flaws as a GM is that I'm always excited to run something new.
Yep.
My biggest
Yeah, it
flaw,
certainly is.
my biggest flaw as a GM right now is that I don't really have a group, but that's not really here nor there. But yeah, no, we were just gonna bring up some like new games, either game systems or just like premise for a game that we are eager to run sometime in the future,
Mhm.
or that we would have wanted to run at some time in history.
Personally, I recently reread the Amber Chronicles, and as much as I've maligned it in the past, I'm pretty sure I've maligned it on this very podcast.
More than likely.
Yes, I'm pretty sure we did. And
I've been intrigued lately by the idea of diceless role-playing games, and I've never known
somebody who's run the Amber role-playing game with all people who've played Amber.
You mean Red Amber?
Red Amber.
Red Amber, that's what I meant. I'm really stupid today. Rory has had tales of it, but he's never run it with us, where he, where everyone has read it. So I've been trying to not subtly or gently pressure Jeff into reading or listening to the Amber Chronicles, because I'd like to try that. I think it'd be fun to run or play it.
You know, I know just where you're coming from with that, because we, not to make light of our close gaming companion Rory, but yes, he has tried to rope us into playing the Amber Diceless role-playing game at least 2, maybe more times.
I played it once with him.
I've played it twice with him, and he's tried to rope me into it at least 5 times.
I've
other than that.
played it twice with him, and I played almost the exact same character both times, and they were both very different and very brief experiences. Now, I have to admit, though, that I had not read the books until much later, and it was one of those things like, I listened to them on audiobook, and as soon as I immediately got it and understood why I should have wanted to play that game.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those moments in time that I'm not 100% sure it would have gone over all that well, even if we all had.
Yeah, I had the same experience.
I guess I'd say unless everybody is buying in exactly the same amount, it's a really tough sell, I think.
Yeah.
Because one person doesn't know what they're going to be doing, and it's kind of a game where you have to understand a little bit of the world.
Yeah,
it definitely is.
And I don't know, from my point of view, when you don't understand the world, Amber is not defined by its setting, which I heard from many people is very interesting. It's instead defined by, this is the diceless system. Neat, how does that mechanic work?
Yeah.
And that's not what it's about at all.
No, Amber is all about, like the characters and the setting and all this crazy stuff. And without knowing about that, I think, especially if the rest of the players do, or the GM does, like when the first time I played it with Rory, like it was me, I don't even remember, but I think it was just Rory and one other person there had read it. And it was pretty bizarre.
If I had to say one thing about his games in particular that I think did them no service, was that he tried to do like the first book with everybody, where it was every character was unaware that they had this legacy of great power, and we all were discovering it together. And
I think there's a lot of cool different ways.
And
to do it.
I think particularly for a player who's not familiar with the literature, or who is less familiar, a much better way would have been to explain to them that they have superpowers and that this is what they're supposed to be doing. This is the environment they're in, as opposed to both times I played a character, he was an average Joe with superhuman strength who found out that he was in this world of intrigue that he didn't care about.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, when do I get to start pummeling somebody, because I have super strength, I want to use it. And so I think that there's a lot of different ways it could have gone, but yeah, I definitely agree that that's an appealing one.
And it's especially appealing to me because I think, we've been role-playing over the internet a lot, and running a game like that over the internet would be interesting. I mean, there's nothing, there's no battle board, no dice or anything like that.
No
it's
20s
just like,
to fake.
Yeah, Ed. And Joe, if you're out there listening.
I don't fake 20s, I fake 17s. It's plausible.
But, the fact is, like, the original reason it popped in my mind is because I thought, I could run that over the internet without having to worry about all this other setup crap. It's just a bunch of dudes sitting around a table. One person has a book, and that's the GM, and that's the only one that matters, And everybody else just gets into it. There's no distractions, except for Ed, who has to look at the computer and talk over the microphone and all that other stupid crap that he likes to do.
Quit picking on me.
But no, I mean, it's been in my mind a lot, and I've been browsing Reddit RPG, and they've been talking about diceless role playing games on occasion, and I mean, I sort of want to try it just because. I mean, we played Fiasco, and that was technically a role-playing game with dice, but that does not count. Use dice as markers more than anything else in that game.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it's something I would definitely be interested in exploring. I think over the remote distance, diceless game especially would be effective. In that game, I have read a lot of the actual game book, and it seems like it's the sort of thing that would lend itself to like a decent amount of planning and kibitzing between actual game sessions.
Yeah.
Depending on exactly the character of game and the type of group you want to run with.
That would be good for like forums and shit.
Mm-hmm. That also
Yeah.
brought up an idea to me that was intriguing that I had while I was at work last week, and I liked the idea of the GM not knowing everything the players are doing, that everything they want to do, and like Amber, particularly, like the setting lends itself to that sort of thing, and that's like really fascinating to me. Like we've talked about Rory and his brother Brandon on here before, and they're both players who tend to play like that. Like they have Brandon especially always has something going on in his brain, like some bizarro scheme that the GM would never have seen coming, and like that's really cool to me. Like I ran a session of the Seamwalkers game with Brandon in it, and he cooked up some stuff that caught me off guard, but at the same time, it was really entertaining. I think for me as a GM and also for the players, that stuff was happening that's seemingly out of the GM's control. That's always entertaining.
Yeah, he turned us into a band of hooligans for a session before I could steer us back to the light.
That was a good time.
Yeah. I guess I'd say for my money, there are a number of games that I, have been eager to try. And I did a post on the blog a long time ago enumerating two of them in particular. And I'm not going to go into those again just because my thoughts are pretty well recorded on them, and it would just make me start to drool if I talked about them too much. But one game that I've been thinking about recently that I'd sort of like to try my hand at running or playing, and now you guys can call me out on this because we technically have played it, but since Jeff was running it, it doesn't count, is Changeling the Lost.
Yeah, I knew that one was coming.
I know.
God.
And it's just one of those things like...
I just wanted to say that.
I don't know. Changeling, the dreaming was always kind of... it didn't really make sense to me. It didn't seem a lot of fun to me. But Lost seems like just a whole different ball of wax. And there's something about that really speaks to me.
Lost is really popular for a reason, and I think it's really shallow, but the only reason we never played it is because of dreaming.
Yeah. Lost, when I read through the book and when I, I looked at the stuff that, that they had, it seemed to me like a role-playing game of a Tim Burton movie, like
Kind
it's
of.
all this creepy other world. This, it was very,
or like 9.
yeah. It was just it's so seemingly out there, and it's very unique. Also, it lends itself to a really unusual, creepy element that, like the other World of Darkness games, are almost too normal. They're too much in the real world to have as much as Changeling ingrains this bizarreness into it. It makes it weird.
Yeah,
I like that.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of fairies and fairy-related things in fiction. I feel like
any of us in particular are.
I mean, I just feel like sometimes it's a little too close to fantasy for people to just ignore it, and I usually wish that they would.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that Lost has got it. The take on it is so, I don't know if I want to say fresh, but it's like it really approaches it in a way that I think it's probably what other people see in fairies that I just don't see. But it's just got that, it's creepy. There's like different, I mean, so much about the mechanics of Lost are based on on rules and bargains and things that, like, little minutia that I think would be fun to keep track of as a player, difficult to keep track of when you're running the game, and they just make a huge amount of difference to the characters.
Yeah.
And I would be eager to try it. And yeah, like you were saying, it's dark as sin compared to Dreaming.
Yeah, it's dark. It's pretty dark compared to most of the.
I mean,
granted, all the New World of Darkness was pretty dark, but
right.
The Changeling one, when I read it, I'm like, no, that's like really dark. Those guys have it rough.
And I mean, it's got some of the quaintness of, like, traditional. I mean, I guess I'd say traditional modern fairies, but just like all under this kind of inky veneer of like morbid fantasy. I don't know. It's just so appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess one other. I guess this is kind of on the line of games that we've technically maybe played, but not really. We a while back did a game 1 of the Warhammer game. What was that called?
Oh yeah,
Deathwatch.
Deathwatch.
Oh, I desperately want to play more.
I
of
would
that.
love to play an actual campaign of that. That game looks really cool. It's probably $60, but it looks cool.
Definitely $60.
I actually did like handle the actual book, and it was very intimidating compared to the pre-release material.
Because of the Space Marines.
Home.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, I mean, literally, I thought that the rules, just, it all looked very, like, I don't know, almost unapproachable, but I still would be interested in giving it a run.
And I would be interested in GMing a game of that, just because I think that
You know the setting.
I like the setting a lot. I've read a surprisingly large amount about the setting, even though I've only ever barely played the game. But it's just, I think it'd be really fun. Not
to derail too much, I'm not terribly familiar with like the Warhammer 40K mythos, but I vaguely remember reading somewhere recently that they're going to come out with a new another role-playing game in that universe for playing Chaos affiliated characters.
Oh, really?
Which I guess a lot of people in the fan community have been kind of screaming for.
Really?
I feel like they're really. I mean, it's like there are so many different factions in the miniatures game that it's like doing one. I mean, one of them at a time in role playing games it's going to keep them publishing games for decades.
Well, if they come out with a Tyranids game, I'll run that.
Oh yeah, sure. It'd just be like.
I mean,
here's how a session would go.
Turn the Deathwatch book upside down.
You get to a planet. All right, well, we're going to eat everything. All right, well, here's some combat. Do that for like 6 sessions. And then you leave and go to another planet. And then you eat everything. It's pretty much how a Tyranid... I think I've already run the game, so you don't really need to...
Don't spoil the ending, man.
The Tyranids die. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was trying to avoid also beating like the new World of Darkness games into the mud, but basically I haven't played anything. Well, the only new World of Darkness games I really played for real are Mage and I think a skosh of Vampire.
And I would say an amount of classic New World of Darkness because Jeff ran almost all of his games with just World of Darkness characters.
I've played the systems. I'm a fan of the system. I find it very simple to use and easy to adapt. But like in terms of setting and overall story, I would
a whole bunch of them I'd like to play.
I wouldn't hate to play Werewolf the Forsaken. It's not highest on my list, but it's it's got a lot of material and a lot of appealing things in it.
Ebo has basically promised to run a Promethean game, which I am still leery about.
I think I'm going to do that pretty soon. I was actually, I've got all the settings for it. These guys didn't make characters before when we were back in Winona, and then I didn't run it. Then I decided, let me just read Frankenstein when I get the chance, and then once I finish with that, start it back up again, and I'm almost done with that book because I'd never read Frankenstein before. So coming up soon-ish, I'll probably be running a Promethean game. I have another idea for a not strictly Pathfinder game also that I've talked a little bit about with these guys. And that should be fun. It's going to be post-apocalyptic, but I'm not really sure what I'm going to do exactly with that. But now that Gunslinger is out, it's a much bigger possibility.
Sure thing. But yeah, no, I mean, I want to play Promethean. I very badly want to play Geist because I still think that they're, like, at least character-wise, among the coolest of the different World of Darkness things. I realize that they're also among the most godlike powerful, but they have such a neat flavor and a completely different take on the underworld than I would have imagined that it intrigued me immediately.
I think I almost like the concept of Geist more than I like the actual like mechanics of the characters. I feel like
I like a lot of the stuff that they do.
What
they
are they?
actually seem like the most good or good inclined.
I mean, I think it's just when you get to like the 5-dot powers, I feel like, I mean, they get. I feel like they get too strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say they're up there with mages.
No, I mean they're
saying something.
They're pretty high above mages in a lot of ways when they get to like 4 or 5 dots and something. Granted, that's pretty potent in itself. But what I'm saying, I guess, is like I really like the idea of the way they interact with ghosts and the underworld, and the character of the Geist bonded with the Sin Eater.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a really cool setting.
And I also particularly like the crew mechanics for creating your own groups and joining.
Yeah, that's a complicated little system, but what I read of it was really neat.
I feel like that particularly could be adapted to any of the New World of Darkness games pretty easily for you to like.
I hadn't thought about that.
I mean, I know that they've been integrating like tier mechanics into all of their games via storyteller guides that they've been publishing, just like options for having like street level characters and then bigger organizations and then like globe spanning conspiracies. But even more than that, the way like the characters in Geist can like form their own groups and sort of like make their own little death religion that they can then invite other people into and make it into a bigger group.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I find something terribly appealing about that.
Yeah. It gives the players a level of control over the events, even the just the NPCs of the world that I think is cool.
Yeah, and Geist has that angle of the limited White Wolf game. It's the really strange, off-brand. I don't know. I always assume that those limited ones are in lower population, like you were mentioning stuff about Mummy earlier. I mean, it's kind of like that. If you want to not be the normal standard werewolf, mage, vampire, then there's more options out there. Like Geist is good.
Oh yeah, I want to run Mummy when it comes out.
I want to be a Mummy Promethean vampire, so just look forward to that character.
Yeah,
Drop that like a bomb.
Ever since that second Twilight movie, I've really wanted to play in a Forsaken game.
Nope, never.
Oh, Jeff, come on now! Don't make fun of Forsaken.
You killed it. You slapped it around a little bit.
So I'd like to take this in a different direction, away from White Wolf, because we've been talking about that a bunch. The Ebo brought up a while back, and also very recently, talking about Paranoia, which is a game that I desperately want to play, but I know that if I look at the rules, I'll only suffer for it. So I don't.
Yep.
Which I'm sure Ed has already done.
I've
Lee will
looked
suffer
at them.
for it.
I haven't. I can't say that I've read them in any great depth, but I've seen it with my
Some
eyes.
depth.
I read them.
It's one of those games where I feel like I would have been more excited to play it if I had gotten in on one of the earlier editions.
I don't know. I think that it's a game that just seems like it screams extremely entertaining one shots to me.
Yeah, I mean it's such a fun premise, but it's kind of like I just get the feeling like a humorous game, which I mean it's gonna be humorous even if it's really really grim.
Yeah, it is.
You mean it's gonna be humorous because it's really, really grim?
Well, yeah, I mean I you could take it either way, but I think you're gonna be laughing after a few of your clones have been zapped. I don't know. I get the feeling like I don't know, maybe more refinement to the rules isn't necessarily going to help it.
That's all right. Most of the people don't know the rules.
And I guess
You can't know the rules
My
unless
take-
you're running.
my take on it is something like I've also had some interest in running a generic game using the Fate system, which I'm not sure if any of you guys know anything about it. But
Only what you told me, and then I made fun of you for telling me.
it's a fairly generic role-playing game system. I mean, Evil Hat, the company that created it or publishes in it, they've created a number of unique setting games using the system, but it can be adapted a lot. Anyway, my point is, if I was going to run something like Paranoia, I would probably just run a Paranoia story in a more versatile system. Unless, of course,
I can see that.
you can just port in any mechanics that you really need. I
Yeah.
guess I don't know how the Paranoia mechanics would fare in something as...
You better not.
Well, yeah, I better not, I guess.
You would just shut him down?
Yeah, I don't know anything about paranoia. Ebo tried to explain it to me for a little while, and I'm pretty sure he was trolling me the whole time.
I try. That's exactly what paranoia is.
So I figured,
tried to explain it to you in a way that you wouldn't know what it meant, what it was.
All
Which
I
is
can
better
really
for you when you play the game.
gather is that I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to be like drunk when I play it, or I don't really know.
That's
But
the
yes,
hope.
it sounds fun. Either way, it sounds awesome and crazy.
I like crazy games. I think that like we tend to play even if we play in a game that's funny, it's not because the system is funny, except for the time that we played Fiasco. Like we tend to play serious systems, and then the games end up being funny, usually on accident. And like I don't know, like it seems to me that the hardest types of games to run would be comedy and horror games. Because you're usually sitting around with a bunch of your friends, and it's hard to be scary to a bunch of your friends, and it's hard to. It's almost weird to go into a game knowing that the idea is to be a joke, and I don't know. So I've been sort of intrigued by just games that lend themselves towards that sort of thing. Like Paranoia is definitely a comedy game. So is Fiasco.
Yeah, I mean...
And like Changeling is a perfect horror setting where things can seem like almost lighthearted and then turn grim and terrible at an instant. And like I think that is cool, I'm intrigued to try look for more systems that have those sorts of options without making it seem forced.
I guess I remember one instance where we tried to make characters for humor value and play in kind of a funny, lighthearted game. And I felt like making characters for that was really fun. Playing the game itself was not as fun.
Yeah.
And I think it, that definitely has to do with the system and also the game, the person running it just being comfortable with, with the rules going in that direction on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, the game I'm pretty sure was 3rd edition D&D. The GM was Jeff, and the premise was there were kobolds killing people and hiding behind dead bodies on sticks, which they were using as disguises, I think, something like that.
Wait, was this the one with Steve McPaladin?
Yes,
the session that I wasn't
Steve
there for.
McPaladin, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't unfun. It was just like, once we got these off the wall characters made, it was sort of we started playing, and it was kind of what's the point?
It was an evening of juvenile reverence, and that was about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean-
guess I'd say so.
I'd like to try more systems that are geared towards that, because, I think that I don't know if the series systems lend themselves to that quite as well. If I were to try to run a horror or comedy game in like Pathfinder or White Wolf, I would definitely want to spring it on the characters.
It works well if the characters are bad. I've played in like D&D games where all the characters they made were like just very ineffective, and most of the game like people were just drinking and laughing about how they can't roll above a 5.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of funny and hilarious.
Yeah.
And the rules didn't matter. People would die and the GM would just sort of hand wave it away. I mean, it was really fun actually. But yeah.
And I mean, Lee's been talking a lot about like horror games, and I guess even more general than like game systems you'd like to run. Like, I'd like to run or participate in a really genuine horror game. I feel like I've played a lot of White Wolf, and very little actual horror has come of it, and that just seems like not exactly the way it's supposed to go.
Yeah, well, I mean, I run a lot of White Wolf, and aside from the games that aren't actually White Wolf, I tend to go more in the direction of intrigue, I guess. Whereas, like, horror is harder to do.
I think it
Yeah,
seems like the hardest.
For us, it seems like that might be a little difficult to do, because even when it's supposed to be creepy, you still might get a laugh out of something
Mm-hmm.
Well,
from one of us. But
Yeah,
I don't
we're
know,
just friends.
I feel like the closest that I've felt to that was you ran a Mage the Awakening game, which was the only one that I've ever played that I didn't run. Which I mean, it wasn't like really really menacing. There was a lot of intrigues, but there was just some moments in that game where situations would arise where I just didn't know how I was going to get out of it, and I think that's like the horror thing that I'm thinking of. Like,
I think about as horror.
I don't know how you could keep that rolling for an entire game, but yeah, there were moments in that game where I just thought that things were going to keep getting worse and worse for me, and I mean, it was like I had the mentor who started acting like his opposite number, and so I had to figure out why he was suddenly acting like the villain, and it was just kind of like really spooky, because it was just like you'd get in a conversation with him and suddenly he'd say something completely not only unexpected but just god awful, and you're like, what is happening here?
I think that a lot of this, like, the stuff that I associate with being like with scary games is because we make such heavy use of music in our games.
Right.
And like the first time I can remember being creeped out in a game was completely, I think it was on accident, but like Sean, way back in the day in second edition, used a song from the Amityville Horror, which haunts my nightmares to this day.
Yeah.
And it was like the scenery was particularly bizarre. Everything about the place was creepy and weird. It was like we were playing in Sean's attic, and there were like 7 or 8 people in there or something stupid, and the whole session was just bizarro, creepy town because of that. And like, I wonder if it's possible to run a whole game like that, or if every horror game ends up being a one-shot where everyone dies. It's something I want to try or experience, just because it seems so different than what we do, and it seems difficult and interesting. Pretty much in any system. I don't know. Something I want to experience.
Yeah, I would just completely agree that that's got to be a tough type of game to run.
Yeah, but rewarding. I think it would be extremely fun to scare the crap out of your friends. No one would ever look at you the same way again. They'd be like, "What if he is actually an axe murderer? There's that chance. He was so convincing."
The hardest challenge of running a horror in a role playing game would be you can't rely on on Hollywood tricks to scare people. Like you can't have the
right.
monster jumps out at just this moment and you poop your pants. It has to rely on
Does that happen?
Atmosphere.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess I've never actually pooped myself in a movie theater, but I don't usually go to see horror movies.
Have you pooped yourself somewhere else?
The,
No, don't tell me. I'd like to leave it up to my imagination.
You do that, but you'd have to rely on like actual, psychological things, atmosphere. I mean, you could use some music. I know that I've been in some games where, a lot of the games I've been in have exploited music, and I think that's one of those things that can really drive home that this is supposed to be creepy.
Yeah.
I think one of the situations where it was, not to go off on a tangent, but another one of Jeff's games where we were in a deserted space station and he was playing, it was some Silent Hill song. I cannot remember what it was called.
Anything from Silent Hill makes me nervous.
Right. And it just had, I don't know, it just had this sort of, it wasn't like any sort of rhythm. It was just sort of a droning sound. And I sort of felt like even without him telling us that this place was deeply creepy, it became like much creepier. Just, every time we went into a room and there was nothing in there, it got creepier.
Was that the session where I ruined all the tension?
I don't remember.
I think it was.
More than likely.
You didn't completely ruin it if I remember the tension and not whatever it was that you did.
Supplies! Pretty sure that was it.
Oh. Well, good for you.
Yes, it's a gift.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, this is, like, I would definitely, my goal is to try, either to try one of these things out, or force one of my friends to try them out, and then report back to you all about how successful or unsuccessful it was. Successful if me or Jeff try it, and unsuccessful if Ebo or Ed try it.
I am very bad at games.
Did Lee just put me on a team?
I'm still
I feel
not.
like that's what just happened.
I'm still not so sure that I am ever going to run a game where nobody but me is here. I'm not sure how well that would work.
Dude, you can have Joe.
Yeah, dude.
Joe's moving away too.
That's true.
But not for a
Can
little
run
while.
it with Boswell.
Run it with just Joe and me all night long.
Yeah, it's getting weird in here. So how about we call it a wrap?
Yeah, I think that is a pretty close to time. So yeah, I mean I've enjoyed this little repartee.
Yeah, I've got some good ideas. I think I know exactly how to scare my friends now.
Yeah, it's we need to stop talking about this because it just makes me think about all those White Wolf games I want to play.
It makes me think about all of the
It's bound to happen.
our apartment occupied around that to Hollywood trick you.
Your needs are contagious, Ed.
Yeah, this was really an unhealthy conversation to have while there was still a game going on. So thanks.
Exactly.
Thanks, me. All right, well, we are gonna sign off now. So we will.
It's been fun.
Soon. Definitely come and visit our blog at houserule.com. Drop us a line. Give us some feedback. Anything else you'd like to hear? We'd be more than happy to do exactly what you say, like obedient little servants.
Sure.
Watch us stream.
Yeah, we'll
pretty much
hopefully get
the-
those streams up next time we play, so that'll be great times.
Cool.
All right, well, we will see you next time.
Peace.
Later.
Bye.
Cue music. Stop shouting Deebs at me.